Well, if you want to go back to the beginning of the Seahorse was a two-story building which should have been condemned.
The building may not have been ideal, but for Tom Beatty and thousands of LGBTQ plus people in South Bend during the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, the Seahorse was deeply meaningful.
The music was a boombox. The bar had painted coffee can lights over the bar with red light bulbs in it. And you couldn't see that in low lighting. You couldn't see what the carpet really looked like that for all those drinks that had been spilled on it.
Its low lighting may have covered up a lot of quick and inexpensive interior design elements, but the Seahorse's owner, Gloria Frankel, and the community she supported put a lot of care into making that space special. I'm George Garner from the Indiana University South Bend Civil Rights Heritage Center, and we're telling local history in South Bend's own words.
I had some of the biggest crushes on guys in high school, and I couldn't do anything about it.
That's Tom Beatty. He grew up in South Bend, and despite a hostile culture around him, he knew who he was from a very young age.
4 or 5 years old, I always knew that I was. I already knew right then that this is something that you don't do. You don't talk about it. I don't know how I picked that up or how I knew that, but I just knew it.
Tom attended both Riley and Penn high schools in the late 1960s. Riley was rougher for him, and the anti-gay abuse from his classmates was clear.
You would see the harassment that, even if they weren't gay, that gay people would experience. All the names that you're called, pushed, elbowed, or pushed, you would see it.
Tom knew he was gay, but he still had to exist in a world that actively fought against him. And so, like many gay men in his generation, he tried dating a woman.
And we were together for, 3 or 4 years. My mom started introducing her as her future daughter-in-law.
After years of wrestling who he was with who she needed him to be, he finally broke off the engagement.
She was very Catholic. And I had to explain to her, I says, this is just not going to work. And the reason why is because I don't think you can live with my being gay. And she says, you're right, I can't.
Fortunately, their friendship survived for a long time after that. But it took his parents quite a while to learn who their son really was.
My mom did by the time of my early 20s. But I started at Wisconsin University, then I came back to IUSB. And that's when my mom knew because with my mom, I would always bring people over. And she pretty much figured out. She asked me one time, is Randy gay? And I says, I think you would need to ask him that now. And just looked at her. And she wasn't going to say anything, but she knew. My dad would not talk about it. Would not ever, ever, ever talk about it. I asked him sometimes, and he would leave the room. He would not talk about it.
For Tom and for others in the LGBTQ community, the few gay bars in South Bend were among the only places they could authentically exist as their whole selves. And while South Bend did not have as many places as, say, Chicago or New York, we had some. And Tom let us learn about them.
St. Joe Waterworks, which is the old East Bank on the corner of the building coming in from Jefferson Street.
Tom's talking about what is now the Emporium building on the St. Joseph River.
And you couldn't touch, you couldn't, there was no dancing. And you always had the chance of bullets coming through the window. So you never sat by the front window. And you could be harassed by the police coming in at any time.
I had to take a moment after hearing that. There was no dancing allowed because it was illegal. And you had to watch where you sat for fear of people shooting into the windows. And that's on top of harassment by South Bend police.
And let alone if you went outside, you could be harassed or hurt outside, especially if you went out alone. So that was the first bar in town that I went into. Before that, there was where Clo Chiswick is now. There was a Jolly Spot, which was this very, very little small building that had some field and concrete lot around it. I mean, there was no buildup like there is now. Around that same time, and even before that, downtown, which doesn't exist anymore, was the Blue Note.
The Blue Note doesn't exist anymore because it was torn down to build a parking garage. It's the one on Main and Colfax streets. The Blue Note was a blues bar for both LGBTQ and straight people. But Tom's experiences changed when he went into the Seahorse and met its legendary owner, Gloria Frankel.
I met Gloria when I walked through the door of the Seahorse, the old Seahorse.
He said the old Seahorse because there were two. The first was buried in a neighborhood a block off of Western Avenue.
The Seahorse was just a blast. I mean, right from the get-go, it was fun. People were fun. People were happy to be able to be more open and to touch and to dance together.
Remember earlier when Tom said that you weren't even allowed to touch another person at some gay spaces? What Gloria Frankel did was create a space where people could be together as their whole selves. But that was a huge risk. Then, and even now, there was pushback.
She was constantly fighting off cops at the door. And the cops would wait outside for people to come out. Because if they didn't have a warrant or a probable cause or reason to come in, she wouldn't let them in. But then she fought with the city all the time. She went to court and fought to get a dance license because they were refusing her a dance license.
In 1975, Gloria moved the Seahorse to a new location right along Western Avenue. The increased exposure meant taking on even more risk. One night in November 1982, someone was seen throwing a firebomb into the bar. Gloria and several others had apartments upstairs. The fire spread, gutting the bar.
She was just about gave up. I mean, the place was pretty well gutted. All of a sudden, I mean, the community just started showing up, and people were bringing hammers and nails and boards, and people just started getting to work. And studs were going up, and walls were going up, and doors were going up, and then the interior was being totally and completely redone, and new booths being put in, and a new bar being put in.
The community that Gloria helped build and protect helped protect her. And together, they rebuilt a space they all loved.
Gloria was, she liked her people and she liked her baby being full. The bar was always her baby. It was the focus and a big part of her life. But Gloria's was packed all the time. The Seahorse was packed all the time. People were always touching and meeting each other and getting to know each other because you had to. I mean, you were flowing through this sea of people.
The openness and closeness and connection Tom and others felt came crashing down with the AIDS crisis. Tom remembers the first time he heard about it.
The first time is when I was talking to somebody and someone grabbed my arm and whispered in my ear that he had HIV. I had no idea, but whether it was true or not, I never found out. I don't even remember who the person was, just that somebody had grabbed my arm and whispered in my ear that he had HIV.
Tom ended up working with AIDS ministries, helping people learn their status and protect themselves and their community. But the work was hard. As the peak of the crisis subsided and the media attention waned, Tom felt the care for this pandemic just wasn't the same anymore.
But I don't think you have that today. Or if you do, at least not anywhere close to what it used to be. Although there should be. I love it that there's, for I don't know how many years, there's only 40,000 new infections a year. Where in the hell did they come up with only? No, there's still 40,000 new infections a year. Don't you think there's something wrong with that? What news reports do you hear anymore? Hardly none. On World AIDS Day, you're lucky to get a section in the South Bend Tribune that's 2 inches tall and a column about something happening for World AIDS Day.
South Bend's Own Words is a production of the Indiana University South Bend Civil Rights Heritage Center. This episode was produced by Jon Watson from the Ernestine M. Raclin School of the Arts at IU South Bend. It was written and hosted by me, George Garner. Kevin Tidmarsh was the co-creator, and its theme music was by Josh Woodward. Are you looking for more honest conversations about the history of South Bend? Visit us and learn how IU South Bend students inspired the transformation of a once segregated city-owned swimming pool. We offer guided tours and put on numerous public events that shows how the history of oppression echoes through this city today. See and hear more local history, or plan your visit, all at crhc.iusb.edu.